The first thing I would like to do is say a sincere thank you for all of you to take this time out of your day on Memorial Day. I think it's easy for us Americans to take for granted and becoming complacent with what the cost of freedom is. And the cost of freedom is sacrifice. And the cost of freedom, in some cases, is the lives of our beloved sons and daughters who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And some of us who made it home, this is always hard for me, so I don't know what it is about Memorial Day that brings this up to me, but I lost brothers and sisters. I know many of us maybe have lost brothers and sisters in war, and many of us came home with a heavy burden as well, from the cost of war. So I want to say a sincere thank you for taking that time to acknowledge this day for what it is. I'm also humbled to be in presence of the men and women who are here today. They truly give me hope and strength to continue the fight for freedom of this country every single day, so thank you. But most importantly, I really want to say a sincere thank you to our Lord for allowing me to be present with you all today. I pray I do not take this life for granted that God gave me. For reasons I still don't completely understand, God allowed me to come back from Iraq and continue to protect me in my job as a police officer in the city of Fitchburg. And I pray for the grace to be a man worthy of this gift and his love. So with this, thank yous out of the way, and I also like to thank the mayor for asking me to do this. We had a lot of good conversations about Memorial Day, about my service. Thank you, Chad, for introducing me, and thank you for always being there for me. If you don't know, Chad was a lieutenant when I first started at this Fitchburg Police Department, and I truly believe that through his leadership and the leadership of our previous chiefs, that they continue to support military veterans at the Fitchburg, especially the police department. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about me, a little autobiography. And I think it's important to hear stories of service members because I think it represents us as a collective whole. I think that my story is very similar to the stories of many of our service members, of our struggles, of our sacrifices, of our families. And so I'll start a little bit about me. I grew up in a very small town of Pulaski, Wisconsin. It's up near Green Bay. And when I was in high school, that's when September 11th happened. And I remember those days. They were very hard days for our country. And I remember us going to war in Afghanistan. And I particularly remember us going to war in Iraq. When I graduated high school in 2004, I decided to go to college initially. And what my mission was is I wanted to go join our ROTC program and become an officer in the military. I went to UW-Madison for a few years. And through many experiences, and I won't get into all the details of the story, I just decided that my place was not necessarily to be an officer at that point. And I decided to enlist in the military and leave college. In this process, I truly wanted to be a member of the Airborne. My grandfather served at the end of World War II in the 82nd Airborne, and I really believed in its heritage, its pride, and its storied history. And I think that really brings me to, and I really wanted to be a part of that premier infantry group. So I had the opportunity to go into the 101st Airborne, and that's where I decided to go. Prior to going to the 101st Airborne, I actually decided or asked my beautiful wife, who is my high school sweetheart, to marry me. And we were only 21 years old. And 21 years old, we decided to get married, and just before I left for Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we got married, and then we left and we started our lives together in the fire. Shortly after we got married, about 9-10 months later, we had my oldest son, who is also back here, Johnny Jr. And he was born about 3 months before I left for Iraq. And when we left for Iraq, it was understanding that we were going to be going south of Baghdad, and we were going to be a part of what was called the surge at the time. I'm sure you may recall when President Bush started the surge. And our mission was to go into areas of Iraq that had not been seen by coalition forces and to clear out all the insurgency. So this is where, I'm sorry, Chad, for the very long name. We went to Iskandariyah, Iraq, and our mission was primarily to go into there and to clear out insurgencies. And through the grace of God, I made it through this experience. The first 3, 4, 5 months were very difficult for our battalion and our company. We had a lot of struggles, and we definitely fought a strong insurgency in our area of operation. I could get into stories later. If you get to know me, I can tell you stories about how, for whatever reason, God chose me to still be on this earth where it probably shouldn't be that way. But we'll save that for later. But I would like to also go back a little bit here. When I left for Iraq, my son, Johnny, was only 3, 4 months old. And this was very, very difficult for me. As a new father, I was only 22 years old, and I had a baby boy at home, and it was a struggle every day to be away from him. When I got back from Iraq, he was almost 1.5 years old, and he barely knew me. Now that changed in about 2 or 3 days. We became best pals. We were crawling around on the floor and having a bunch of fun. Those memories are still vivid in my head, and I appreciate every single one of them. So that brings me to what I did when I got back from Iraq and I decided to leave the military. Naturally, when I got back home, my wife and I got pregnant again. And we had my beautiful daughter, Natalie. And so I decided that I served my country and it was time to focus on my family. So I needed to find something for me to do. And I didn't really have a lot of skills. I left college without a degree. I didn't have a direction in life. And so I needed to find something that really fit with who I am as a person and my natural character, which I believe is I have a natural sense of being a protector. And so I thought that being a police officer would fit very naturally in my life. So this was a time that was very difficult to find a job as a police officer. And in that period of time, I applied for probably about 50 agencies in the state of Wisconsin. And this is a testament to the city of Fitchburg, and this is the reason, I think Sarah Olson asked me once, our human resources director, is like, why do you stay here? And I was like, because Fitchburg gave me that chance. One of our neighboring agencies, I won't say the name, when I applied, I did excellent on all their testing, and they gave me a response back saying, even though I had all this life experience, all this the service to my country, they gave me a response back saying I didn't have enough education. So when I came to Fitchburg, I wasn't very hopeful when I interviewed. And I remember my interview with the chief, and he asked me what was the reason that I wanted to work at Fitchburg. And I said, number one, my family. I needed a place to work, to support my family. And I think that resonated with the chief at the time. And I also, a testament to our deputy chief, Bates, who was also a military veteran, that he really found value in veterans at our department. So I want to say a special thank you to the city of Fitchburg, to all the leadership that has been here at the city of Fitchburg for always supporting our veterans and giving us an opportunity, and that continues to give us an opportunity. Chief Morales, I think, really has made it a point to hiring a lot of veterans at our department, and I really appreciate that. So that's a little bit about me, and I think that's very indicative of many veterans in this country. And I think we come home from war, and we naturally have to now get back into the swing of what civilian life is, and sometimes that's difficult. And so I want to get to my main point about what I wanted to speak about today. And I don't know if you all recall a photo of a young man who was receiving a flag in 2007 from the casket of his father, Staff Sergeant, who was in the Marine Corps. It's a very iconic photo because the young man was on that verge of, he's showing that strength of his father inside of him, but he was on the verge of very emotional, and it really hit home with a lot of Americans what Memorial Day really means. I don't know if you remember that photo. And that young man's name is Christopher Golzinski. He was only, I want to say, I believe he was like 8 years old at the time of the photo when his father, Mark, who passed away, Staff Sergeant Mark Golzinski, passed away as a Marine Corps, in the Marine Corps in service in Iraq through enemy gunfire. But I think that, many times we don't really consider, how the death of our loved ones overseas really impacts the people over here in the United States, back home. And so that young man carried on his father's legacy. His wife carried on his father's legacy. And now that young man is going to college through a scholarship by, I want to say it was the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. And that story is very indicative of the strength and resiliency of our families back home. And the heavy burden that, Drago, come here. Come here. Oh. And the heavy burden that our families carry from our loved ones that have passed away. And so Heather, Christopher's mom and Mark's wife, carried on Mark's legacy after he passed away. And I think our country is much stronger because of this service as being a military family. Is there any military spouses in the audience today? Can I ask you to maybe raise your hand or stand up? Do we have any? A few? It's okay. I want to acknowledge the military spouses. You provide a special sort of strength to your loved ones that have served this country. And without you, I don't think we'd be the men and women that we are in this service. I want to especially acknowledge my wonderful and beautiful wife, Savannah. And this is where I was going. This is the shared experience that I think many of our military veterans have. My wife is my rock. 100%. When I deployed to Iraq, when I left my son, my family, she was my rock. And we were only 20 in our, 22 years old when I left. And this woman matured beyond the years that we were at that point. She provided me strength and confidence and support that I needed. Every day that I was over in Iraq, I know that her heart was filled with worry, with anxiety, and anxious on if she was going to get that call. But she never showed it, never one day. I talked to her as much as I could, and she was always upbeat, she was always loving. She never told me that there was anything going wrong at home. She took care of business. And this allowed me to, I think she knew that I needed to be laser focused. I needed to be laser focused on my job, on my mission, and I couldn't worry about home at that point because that was going to be potentially, potentially something that would have caused me to falter in my duties and maybe have not come home. So she knew this, and she was my rock. I just thank you, babe. I love you. And I think this is indicative of so many different stories of successful military men and women who have a wonderful support system. And unfortunately, when I got back from Iraq, I lost a lot of my brothers to suicide. And this is a very tough topic to talk about, but I wonder if maybe they had the support that I have, that they may still be with us today. And so I implore each and every one of you that knows military veteran that be there for them. Be there for them, support them in their struggles, because many of us carry the heavy burden of war with us on our souls. And even I did when I got home. And it was through my faith in God and my wife and my family that kept me strong and resilient. And I think that's very indicative, again, my story of all of my fellow veterans. All right, the last thing I really wanted to talk about is the flag. So I brought this flag. It's a very special flag. I carried this flag with me when I was in Iraq. And the flag represents something special to me. So we carried a bunch of these flags. I gave a bunch of them to my close family and friends. And this flag was given specifically to my grandfather Mac. Do we have any Korean War vets here today? I want to say I have a special affinity for Korean War vets. My grandpa was a veteran of the Korean War, and we shared a very close bond. Now, every Memorial Day, my grandpa hung up a flag at his house. It's the size of like the flag at like some of these dealerships across his entire house. He really wanted people to understand and know that he supported this country. He knew what the sacrifice was, and he wanted people to know what Memorial Day really meant. And my grandma sent me a photo yesterday. Unfortunately, my grandpa passed away a few years back. We were best buds. We used to spend every Veterans Day at Applebee's, and he would get the double crunch shrimp. That was his favorite meal. And it was funny because we would talk before and after the meal, but when he was eating his double crunch shrimp, there was no words. So he knew what this flag meant. And when I carried it in Iraq specifically for him, I had it in my pack. I remember the actual patrol that we were on. And I think we took sniper fire that day. And I remember sending it back to my grandma. My grandma presented this to me when my grandpa passed away, and now I have it hung up in my bedroom. And it reminds me every day of his sacrifice, of the sacrifice that I made, and the sacrifice of so many in this country made. And so I really want people to understand what this flag means. I think that we've lost that in some cases in our country, and we really need to stay focused on what freedom, the cost of freedom. So I just wanted to end this by saying thank you again. Thank you for everyone that's here. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to be here on Memorial Day. Thank you to our vets. Thank you to their families that supported these vets. And if you have time or money, I would implore you to maybe find an organization that serves veteran families of their loved ones, such as a foundation that supported Christopher going to college and his family. And I'd like to end it by saying and dedicating this to my beautiful wife. Thank you, Savannah. And I want to give a special gratitude to all the moms and spouses of military veterans and to all our vets. So thank you.